Well, good morning, everybody. First of all, sorry I missed the video yesterday. I was driving down to Cape Girardeau, very close to there, giving a talk. And as I went down there Wednesday night, I got on the very southern end of Interstate 57 here, and there was an accident that blocked the interstate for 3 hours. So I sat on the interstate for 3 hours and finally got to my hotel around 1 a.m. and I was just exhausted, and I had to get up early the next day to give a talk. So I apologize I missed it, but the other announcement is this is going to be the last video I'm going to do on this channel. I will be starting on Monday back at Nutrien, and I'll use their channel for weather content. It'll still go to agweather.com/media, so you'll still be able to get it there. But it's the end of a month, so I thought we'd do a quick recap of what we know about the month of February, what it means for March, and we'll walk through that in these next several slides here. So here you go. These are the precipitation ranks by climate district, and it's kind of the same old story that we've had. We continue to identify these very wet corridors here and in through here. While we have very dry conditions in the southwest southern plains that extend into parts of the Midwest. And we're just questioning how this is going to continue to look as we go through spring, which technically meteorological spring starts tomorrow on March 1. There are some major unanswered questions about the pattern in spring, and those begin with soil moisture. At the beginning of February, so you can see how repeatedly we hit this area with incredibly heavy rains in February. It happened at the beginning, it happened at the middle, and the end. Well, anyway, the thing to note here is that from the beginning of February to the end, what was relatively unchanged? It's the extent at 100 centimeters, or about 3 feet down, of the dryness that is below the frost line in the soil. And that is something that we have to continue to monitor through March and April to see if those spring rains are going to give us a full profile back in these areas, which have been so very dry in terms of the soil moisture content. We also want to know, what does our drought monitor look like by the end of February and April? So these 2 months, which are typically very stormy and wet, do we eat away at the fact that about 70% of the lower 48 is in some form of drought? There's some significant concerns about this, especially where the maps are expected to see drought development. So let's show you a couple of those maps here. I'm just going to go here. We'll click on Change Maps. This will give us the 1 week, but I'm going to go to 4 week just so we can see where drought degradation occurred. So I see parts of the Midwest, the Southern Plains, the Southwest, pockets in the Southeast, all that saw in the last 4 weeks 1 to 2 class degradation and drought. Just kind of thinking about this, I'm going to go back to the CPC site real quick. You've all been to this one many, many times. I want you to go to it later today. Always at the end of the month, NOAA does an update on their 1 month outlook, which will be this one here, which we've already examined and talked about. But I wanted to come down here to their seasonal drought outlook map, just to kind of show you again where we've seen the risk of drought conditions worsening over the coming spring time frame, excuse me. So I'm thinking about all of this because, as I mentioned, we know that a lot of storm chasers are targeting Ohio Valley, Dixie Alley, so that would be the Mid-South, getting down there into the Southeast. And part of the reason for that, just the bigger idea here, is that we've seen so many systems that have come across the United States and they've left very quickly. And this all has to do with trough tilt. Remember, we've talked about this a whole lot. If you want to get a system to slow down and curl up in the southern plains, you've got to get a negative tilt on the trough. And it needs to lean backward in the upper level heights. Instead, we've seen so many of them lean forward, a positive tilt, which means they dig and move quickly. That's also been part of the reason why we've been able to push so much cold air at times across the lower 48. Now, I got to break up February into 2 time frames. We're going to look at February 1 to 22, which is that time frame where we saw very cold air in the Northwest, extremely cold air in Montana. In fact, the front 3 weeks of February for Montana were near record cold, so going back to 1893. And this just tells you that the pattern was set up to just scoot systems through very quickly rather than let them curl up and slow down. Now, very mild in the Southwest, where we continue to watch drought build. In fact, I'll show you a satellite animation just yesterday of a very large dust storm down here. But if you look at the end of the month, the 21st through the 27th, which is the tail end of the Arctic outbreak that we saw in the central plains that made it down to the southeast, we've gone over very, very mild in many places. And what that did was that took our snow depth map, which looked like this on February 21st, and now has it looking like this. And there's something important we need to see about this. In years past, we can typically get 6 to 10 inches of liquid in the snow by the time we finish March in this area, which then gets into the major rivers like the Red River going north, the Mississippi going south, the Missouri River sneaking through here. And this is a year where we're not seeing that snowpack in the northern plains being a major factor. And when you see the temperature forecast, which over the next 5 days, yes, there's a shot of cooler air coming in on Saturday. It's going to move into the northeast. But overall, there's very mild air across much of North America. This is our next 5 days. This is day 5 through 10, and this is day 10 through 15. Now, in the last 3 or 4 days, just talking with folks around the country, the big question I'm getting about this is, are we just breaking over warm? Like, is spring here? And will it go back cold? There are some reasons to be concerned that we could get another shot at significant cold air that kind of follows, there we go, this trajectory again, like we've seen. When do I think it's coming? It's not coming anytime soon. It's not going to be here by the middle of March. Sorry, let's go back to this slide. But it could be something that late March, early April happens. And then what I'm worried about is it happening again in early May. Now, I'm very specifically focusing on this area because that's where we've been able to see the cold air getting let out in these brief but rather intense shots that last 2 to 3 days. Now, I'm not talking about the same kind of cold you can get in February. It's hard to get that kind of cold when you get later into March and into April because of the increase in the daylight hours, the higher sun angles, but we need to be aware of this. Now, the West Coast is a bit more tricky to try to diagnose in terms of cold intrusions. And unlike the East, when the West typically makes a break toward a new temperature pattern, it tends to just hang on to it and go. So let me show you a couple of resources and tools you can be using if you have these questions about frost. The first one, I'll link this in the notes below, but this is the Midwest Regional Climate Center's freeze date tool. And what I've done is I come up here and I've clicked on last spring freeze date map. And you can come over here and hover over any county you want, and you can get the average date of the last 32 degree days. So, for example, wherever I am here in South Dakota, very close to western Iowa, Yankton County. I know Yankton County, April 27th. I come down here to Kentucky, and it's April 15th. So we're just looking at these dates, trying to understand when this last frost freeze date is possible. And if you're not in this area, okay, that this particular map uses, you can go here. Just come to my website, and you can start typing in your city. So I'm heading to Denver this weekend, so I'll just type in Denver. Let's try that again, Denver, and it'll narrow everything down to any location that has Denver in it, and you can click on Denver, Colorado. So as I submit this, it's going to give me the typical forecast pane, which you've all seen this many times. And you just kind of look and you'll see the temperatures. I do notice this weekend is going to be nice. Chances for rain coming in on Monday. Tuesday, drop in temperature by 20 degrees and some risk of snow coming in. That's just a look at the NBM and the GFS. I'm going through a modification of this to add the AIFS and the European as well. But here's what I want you to look at. A couple of things. Slide over here and click on the year-to-date GDDs. Now, we're too early for GDDs to, I think, matter in this location. But what I want you to see are these blue bars. These are every date we've had a frost since 1981. When the bar goes up high, like 4 days here, this means that on this particular day, which is May 14th, 4 times in the last 44 years, we've had a frost on May 14th. But you can see the distribution, if you will. So the latest they've had there since 1981 would be May 24th. The earliest last frost would be the 15th. So anywhere else you can go bring this up and have a good look at it. And you can see your first frost of fall dates. But there's something else I just want to mention here, and it's this. There's a bit of a cadence to this pattern right now. And you say, well, why do you think late March has the risk? Late March into early April has the risk, and then maybe in early May. Because we've watched the atmosphere give us this kind of look where it's kind of built in over a 4-week time period to a major cold episode, warmed up for 2 to 3 weeks, then built back into it for another 4, warmed up for 2 to 3 weeks, and then start to build back in. So that building back in would be here. And I don't know, does it maintain that such that you get another one there? That's what we're trying to diagnose. I could blame a lot of that on MJO movement, but I have a big question about the MJO movement that we have to be discussing. Okay, so take advantage of the site, use it, please. I do know that there is a problem in Fresno. I don't understand why, but Fresno has a issue with the data that goes into the PRISM data set, which I used to reconstruct this. So I apologize to all those folks. We're going to get that figured out and sorted here very soon. But there you go, just another resource that you can use. All right, this last week has been relatively dry for a lot of us in the United States. Now that kind of subtract, of course, the storms we've had along the Gulf Coast. We've had some precip that snuck through here, right into that corridor, some snow about was that a week ago? That came into parts of Denver, into the the high plains here, and then the Northwest. The Northwest got hit pretty significantly with some much needed snow and some rain. But as we take a look at it, I did notice yesterday a couple of neat things on satellite. As we watch a system clear the Northeast, and it did bring in some showers and storms here, there was some open cell convection that moved through parts of Indiana, Kentucky, and Ohio. What caught my attention was just two things here. Actually, three. On the backside, I got a good look at the snowpack throughout the West. We took a look at this a couple of days ago, so you can see that again here. I did notice, though, down south, we could see more controlled burns happening right here in Oklahoma, parts of Texas, and Arkansas. Just kind of zoom in and show you those. You can just see pretty clearly here the wind was favorable to do this, and it was safer yesterday to do this. I also noticed the third thing, and it's down here in Arizona. If we come down there, just take a look at this. Large dust storm right here with some convection popping over the mountains. Really interesting to see that just yesterday. I wonder if any of you dealt with this that watch my videos in this region. So I just wanted to point out a couple of neat things we saw on satellite. Today, the risk is for quite strong winds in through this corridor. And you can see we have wind advisories, red flag warnings. This is all red flag warnings in this area. So whereas yesterday was a bit safer to do the controlled burns, today is not. We do have a couple of spots with winter weather advisories that are right here along our Great Lakes. But we just need to keep an eye on these winds that have come out of Montana earlier this week, which were so strong, and are moving across the central United States. The winds will look something like this as we get in later on today, and there's a front that's going to sweep through here that is going to be dropping the temperatures off temporarily for much of the Midwest over to the Northeast this weekend. But I did notice this. We do have our Tejano wind blowing down here through the Tejano Pass. And one of the interesting things about this is every time we see this in winter, this just tends to give us a better chance at seeing a low pressure system sneak through the central or southern United States, okay? So to think this through, here is the maximum cumulative wind gusts we're expecting just through this, the beginning of this weekend. And you'll take note that we are labeling any place that's got over 50 mile an hour gusts being forecast. So there's some strong winds that are coming through this area. So just please be aware of that. As we then move into the forecast, here's the newest update from the WPC. And you're looking at this, seeing the same corridors getting hit. What I'm talking about is this area getting soaked. We see that more of the West Coast has better chances, and then the same areas that have been dry stay dry. One difference is that this system does have a better chance at pulling some more moisture into parts of Kansas, southeast Nebraska, more of northern Missouri, Iowa, northern Illinois, Wisconsin, which, as we saw earlier, these are some of our dry spots right in through here. So we need to be able to get that moisture back into place there, and see how this kind of moves forward. Across the north, we're still looking at more snow here. I'll show you the snow maps in just a few moments. But where this is all beginning is out here in the Pacific Ocean. Now, I've got a cutoff low here. Why is it cut off? Well, the main flow is doing that. This is just sitting and spinning. And then there's just this deeper trough. You'll watch it come right into alignment with my black arrow here in a few moments. And that is going to be the trough that we're going to watch the phasing of between these two waves. Now, you hear us talk about that term all the time. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. These are my vorticity maps, right? So GFS left, European right. And we've had questions all week about how well these two models are handling the closeness and proximity between these next two waves. So here is the trough that's sneaking through, that's going to really drop the temperatures on Saturday and then Sunday for the Northeast. But it's this cutoff low that's slowly moving under the broader ridge. And here comes the next wave here. So you can see the position of both of these in the GFS left, European right. Now, often I call the lead wave the kicker wave, the one that gets kicked out by the much deeper wave on the backside. And unlike earlier in the week, these two waves are now much more closely aligned in the models. Now, what would be, I don't know if the right word is to say ideal, But if this was about here, okay, in other words, back farther to the west, this wave would have a much better time at kicking it north very quickly. And you're saying, what's that matter? That gives us the chance of letting a wave live in the plains longer, and as a result, draw back way more moisture and increase the chances of precipitation here. But as it stands, the wave is pretty far out ahead. So we have one that sneaks through there. Look at that. It gets all the way over to the mid-south by the time we get into early Monday. And then the much deeper wave, which now looks quite different from the European model versus the GFS, comes over the Intermountain West right here and ejects at some point Monday night, Tuesday morning in the Rockies. Now, if you notice, where did the wave come out? It went right through here. That's why I always look at that Tejano wind. That tells me if the jet is going to be a bit farther to the south than otherwise. It's just one indicator. It's not the only indicator. But we do have a pretty significant system rolling through the midsection of the country, and I do believe that we've got the risk of severe weather to the south here, and I think we need to be paying attention to how this system's going to roll through, bringing precipitation to the rest of the country. But did you see that? I mean, that's Monday. Already by Wednesday night, it's gone. So it's just out. It takes like 36 hours to cross the country. We need these lows to slow down in order to break these drought cycle that we've been in the midsection of the United States. I mentioned the severe weather. Let me just go to the SPC's website real quick, and let's just pull up their latest. Yeah, there's their Tuesday severe weather risk day right there. So they're looking at targeting the lower Mississippi River Valley, getting up into the mid-south with the greatest risk. And then the following day, this is going to be over in Georgia, the Carolinas, Virginia, maybe up to the mid-Atlantic. So with that, let's have a look at, I got to go find it here. There we go. Let's have a look at our model comparison. Okay, Clipper rolls through the Great Lakes, brings some snow into the northeast. That's first. So here it is. Okay. We then watch high pressure build in behind it. That's the cold we're going to get with that trough that sneaks through. So that's the colder weather that moves into the northeast. It's in both models. Here comes the wave. Now the cutoff low is already sitting over Colorado by the time we get into Sunday afternoon. We then watch the much deeper wave coming into California. That's a snowmaker in California for the Sierra Nevada on Sunday. So from Sunday night into Monday morning, the lead wave kicks out. There it is. And the deeper wave is now sitting over San Francisco. It slides into Southern California. We're going to watch for the moisture to get all the way down south here. And then you see snow spreading. Where? Nevada, Utah, parts of Colorado, Wyoming, Montana. And we're going to see this system get organized right there. That would be midday Tuesday. Now, this is going to be a concern for a lot of folks that are going to be in Commodity Classic, myself included. I'm supposed to fly out that afternoon to come back to Chicago and then home. And what I'm worried about here is that we're going to be seeing the snow come in at an inopportune time for some of us that need to be leaving Commodity Classic or even driving back to the east. But as we get into Tuesday night, please be aware that the models are now in much better agreement about the risk of severe weather here. Watch this carefully. This is synoptically a strongly forced system, so we cannot ignore what the potential for severe weather might look like for this. Then the system moves quickly. I mean, here's where it is by Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon and evening, spreading its snow again on the northern side through lower Michigan, Ontario, into Quebec, and then it moves out fast. And there's a wave following it, but they're all moving fast. And the question here when we see this is, how can we pull back moisture to the plains as that moves so quickly? So how about a quick 4-model comparison here on snowfall? This is the European model, 7-day outlook. All right. This is the AIFS, so the artificial intelligence. So let's compare them. European operational, AI. Then we get into the GFS 7-day. Look at the difference right there. And then finally the national blend of models, which is always the last to catch up in my opinion. So could we be looking at a couple inches of snow here? Absolutely. Could it get into the high plains? Yeah, I think it could. Did the Sierra Nevadas grab some much needed early March snow? They do. They need this. We need to have plenty of snow in the Sierra Nevadas by the time we finish March. And ahead of it, we just still have our Clipper track right in through here. On the rainfall side of it, more on the snow. It will be important to watch throughout March if we can get any sort of storm system to start to fill in, this gap here. Because as you saw earlier, of course, a lot of this snow has been melted, and so we need to pack in a bit more just because the later we get into March that we get snow across the north, the more we get to keep the moisture from that snow once we get there. So now let's look over at the precipitation side of it. If you go back to agweather.com, You can always look at my 5 model comparison right through here. And of course, the kind of newest model that we've seen put into operation is the AI. Let's just have a look at it. It's total precipitation through the next 7 or 8 days. Now, the AI model is really trying to drop over the next 10 days the heaviest rainfall from Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Illinois. That's its wettest corridor with drier on the north and south. Is that echoed in the European ensemble? I do see that. I mean, this is the chance over the next 15 days of staying under a ½ inch. We just continually see these 2 corridors staying on the drier side of average. But looking at the wettest corridors, we can kind of see there's kind of 2 regions. I see one through there and one through here, and then we get fully into the northeast, into parts of Ontario and Quebec with the wettest conditions. But with that onshore flow coming into the west, as that jet is kind of poking out there, we do see better moisture for a lot of the western United States and the west coast of the United States. Okay, so I mentioned that jet. Take a look at this. We do expect our jet extension to retract, head back toward Japan, but move a bit more poleward, more northward. And just to kind of make a story of what that means we're going to start to see systems that traverse the East Pacific. Okay, so if you pull the jet back, what happens is the blocking sets up here, not here. So next Friday, just watch, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it's that wave train. Okay, maybe Ozzy Osbourne needs to write a song called Wave Train instead of Crazy Train. That'd be fun. But just look at the Rossby wave train. And what we see is through mid-March, there's a lot of this. And if there is a southeast ridge and more western U.S. troughing, we will see an active corridor through the midsection of the country. The question is, can it hit these 2 areas which have been so very dry? And how much severe weather do you get out of this? That is a severe weather pattern if I've ever seen one. You've seen where? Right here. That setup, that broad of a trough through there, by the time we get to mid-March, that's what we'd expect to see. So we look out there at the day 8 through 14 forecast. And remember, what I just showed you is at the very end of this. And already we're beginning to see how this pattern is expected to get going again. Now you notice in most of the models, following this system that's going to start early next week, we go back over dry. I'll just pull this one up as an example from the European. There's a drier stretch in here. But then we just see more activity coming in. So we'll keep a close eye on that, okay? Back to temperatures. Here's your frost risk map over the next 7 days according to the National Digital Forecast Database. And if we take a look at these temperatures, watch the swing from Friday's highs, especially here, into Saturday. So remember, this is going to be an extremely windy, mild day. And as you get into Saturday, the trough digs in, and we're going to see up to a 30-degree swing in temperatures in this area. Sunday, that moves into the northeast, but already major warm-up happening again. That's March 2nd. This is March 3rd, and here goes March 4th. Now, that will be the day we're going to watch here for the risk of the snow to start. Getting into March 5th and 6th, that low comes out and drops the temperatures behind it. But overall, do I see any major cold air intrusions? I'll just show you another version of the European model you saw at the beginning. This is that 5-day sliding window. That's day 5 through 10, and then day 10 through 15. And again, you look out here and you're going, why is the west cold? Well, the block is happening there. So the jet's coming over the top, diving through and running up over this mild air, which could set up on some higher pressure over the southeast. That's what we're keeping an eye on. Now, when we look out there from mid-March to mid-April, this is actually March 10 to April 10, I don't see any substantial change in that subseasonal forecast from what I've showed you earlier this week. We continue to see this corridor not getting into the best flow. What I mean is systems are coming across, but they're developing later, making the severe weather threat here or Ohio Valley eventually, or maybe in the southeast. But we've now seen a very consistent picture from the models, from the European model, on this being the March into early April pattern. And the concern is over mudding a crop in here, worrying about moisture building here, watching drought, survive. And we took note of this, right? That's the newest update from NOAA on what they're considering for their drought risk. So we just continue to see that kind of evidence of this occurring. There's one sticky point I have with all of this, and it has to do with the MJO. Now, I made mention earlier in the week that we just expected it to kind of continue to make its track. This is that 5-week kind of behavior to the MJO. but it's currently right now expected to stall out into phase 1. And what's interesting about that is we're not getting typical phase 1 behavior. You're going, what is this again? Well, our best rising motion is kind of in that corridor, and there's a lot of sinking happening here. So over this area versus this area. And again, if that doesn't make sense, we just look at historical precedents. At this particular point in the year, MJO phase 1 should give us a jet that extends and peels off like this. Block pattern in the west, cold east. And I just showed you that we're not getting that. So there's something odd about the stalling out of the MJO that is not, let's go back to it, that's not giving us typical MJO phase 1 type weather. And again, if you want to see this a little differently, it looks something like this. There's your block west, your cold central United States east. And instead, we're seeing the models drop troughs here, bringing ridges there. So this makes me question something I brought up to you at the beginning. If this is the case, why are we not seeing MJO phase 1 type weather now? And are we worried about it later in March? You're saying, what are you worried about again? This cold dropping in later in March. That's why I still think there might be a chance for that. So I'll just stew on this and tell you more about it next week as I'm thinking it through. Last couple things, South America. Let's go ahead and get this playing, as I want you to have a look here at recent precipitation in South America. Maybe it'll play. There we go. It's kind of choppy this morning. We have seen this region go over drier. Sorry, this is not a very nice loop here this morning, but this region's gone over drier. In fact, let's just get away from it. There we go. And we can see here on our last 30-day data from CMORPH that drought has built into this region. We've had heavy rains at times down like near Buenos Aires, still drier near Paraguay, northern Argentina. But if we look at where this forecast is going, you need to go, if you are interested in South American weather, you need to go to my website every day. Here's how you do it, okay? Just go to agweather.com, click on regional forecast, South America. I'll be building all these in soon. I'm sorry, it's taken me a while. And when you come here, just slide down and go down to this one, ECMWF Ensemble. Click on it, and then once it uploads, okay, just slide this back all the way to the next 14 days. And every day that you see the model going back over to hot and dry in this area, that is a lead indicator that we could be putting pressure on this safrinha crop. About 25% of it in the eastern growing regions. Not Mato Grosso for the most part. Certainly not with the later planted crops in Argentina, which are expected to be very wet. But watch this very carefully with me. I think that could become an important story going forward. Okay, that's all I got for you today. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and we will talk on Monday. I'll be in Denver. We'll see you there. Thanks.